to this year's Manly Art Gallery and Museum Live Poetry Reading, Spirit of Self-Expression. I would like to acknowledge the Gaanga people of the Eora Nation, on whose unceded land this reading takes place, and thank Manly Art Gallery for hosting us and Northern Beaches Council for sponsoring our event. This year's reading features 22 works by a broad and exciting range of poets, responding to the gallery's self-portrait exhibition, which is comprised of the stunning images that you can see around us. A self-portrait in poetry or painting not only captures a likeness, but also offers a vivid and deeply intimate encounter with its creator. This year's poems include revelatory works that speak from the multifaceted perspectives of different ages, cultures, genders, sexual orientations, and states of mental and physical health and disability. It's going to be an extraordinary lineup of poets and poems. So let's begin with our very first reader. I'm very honoured to introduce him. It is Djon Mundine. Djon is a proud Bundjalung man from the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. He is a curator, writer, artist and activist, and is celebrated as a foundational figure in the criticism and exhibition of contemporary Aboriginal art. Djon has held many senior curatorial positions in both national and international institutions, some of which include the National Museum of Australia, the Museum of Contemporary Art and Art Gallery of New South Wales. In 1993, Djon received the Medal of the Order of Australia for services up to the promotion and development of Aboriginal arts, crafts and culture. And in 2020, Djon won the Australia Council's Red Ochre Lifetime Award for Lifetime Achievement, and is currently an independent curator of contemporary Indigenous art and a cultural mentor. So thank you very much. Please make Djon welcome.
I'll begin. I'm not really seen. Sometimes when I hear those things, this description, sometimes I don't know who I really am, really, when people describe you as thus. So I'm told to read two poems, that I could read two poems, and I will. They're both, I'm an Aboriginal person from northern New South Wales. I've lived a very limited life of literary things. I do read, write. I can, an Aborigine who can read and write, as they say. And I'll read these two things. The first of these is a workshop that I started to do with a woman artist called Fiona Foley, who's a Budgella woman from what's now called Fraser Island by the deaf, dumb and ignorant people. It actually was called Thorogine or Kagari, K-G-A-R-I. The Budgella people in the 1990s lodged a native title claim on Fraser, what's formerly known as Fraser Island. They've now asked that Kagari be the official name on signage, etc. It comes from the thing that my belief that Aboriginal people are everywhere and Aboriginal people do everything. And every square inch of this continent and the offshore islands, people you could name, and you can name an Aboriginal association, a human association, an Aboriginal association to these places, including Manly, etc., the place we're at. So some time ago, during that native title claim, I was asked to agree to write some poems about Fiona and her family and their relationship to Fraser Island. And she was going to create an artist's book. She would make imagery that would be printed at the Canberra School of Art, and I was to write these poems. So without much further ado, I'll go on with this. That you all know Fraser Island. Does anyone know where it is or not? Go on, say something. You're allowed to speak. Thanks. Before your official time. So you all know where Fraser Island is. There was a huge battle to save Fraser Island, as you may remember. I think some grey-haired people here. You'd remember the times of fighting it from a mining company that wanted to mine the sand on Fraser Island. As those of you who watched, and there's an ABC TV program that mentioned this, that it's actually a very beautiful place. There were Aboriginal people that lived on that island. It's such a beautiful place. There's so much fish, there's so much shellfish, fruits, etc., vegetables that grow on that place. So the idea that it's just totally unoccupied is ridiculous. There was so much fresh water. I think the mainland city opposite gets its fresh water from Fraser Island, I think, as well. They're great pools of fresh water. It's a veritable paradise. There are incredible trees. Some of the biggest trees in the world existed on that island. They are satin pines and these other pine trees that are water resistant. They were chopped down largely for use in wharves around the world and around Australia because they're water resistant, they don't rot. A lot of them, in this curious way, were pile driven into the banks of the Suez Canal to shore up the Suez Canal so the sand wouldn't fall into the dredged part of the Suez Canal. In about the middle of the 1800s, there was an attempt to annihilate all the people on Fraser Island, what's called Fraser Island. You would have read lots of things. There are films made about Mrs. Fraser, etc. You won't have a film about the attempted annihilation of all the people on Fraser Island, which is this ridiculous situation. So I wrote this piece as a response to that. So it's called Thorgan Fraser Island, or Bagheri Fraser Island. Which way does the blood-red river flow? Which way does the blood-red river and tide flow? Flows straight from my heart, it flows straight from my soul, like blood pulsing away into the void. So it's a salty sting, sharp and quick, like a slick cut from an oyster shutter's knife. I wander with my dog, that's wander, W-A-N-D-R. I wander with my dog. Two meandering sets of steps, step by step, twining and untwining, weaving the ribbon of life across the beach. Black ash, red blood, yellow fat, and white clay, the four colours of the Aboriginal palette. Marks across the sand, a path of debris, punctuated pauses to engage the eye and the mind, of memory, of rules, of guides, counselling, humour and hilarity, feast and famine. A script I write and play across and act it out and act out. Sad, happy, wonderment, pleasure, pain and sorrow, finally satiated. Verse by verse, chapter by chapter, forever and ever. My own rightful record, my repository, my rightful resting place, my home, my grave. From sunrise to sunset, from here to there, through shallow water, inside, to the deeper shade, to the womb, to shout hello to tall standing friends, to rest inside the diamond, deeper and deeper, to the endless sparkling seashore, to stare into the wide split sky, blue on blue, a wide patch of black presence appears momentarily, a welcoming vision. I come to the fire, I join my mob, I sing my song, a harmony with the rolling sand before it moves over and on. I dance my dance, I left my mark of memory. Oh, that such a special day would ever be involved and enjoyed again. I am become the sand, I am become the water, I become the land, the air. When the wattle tree blooms, when the mullet fish run, will I leave this world and go with that mob? That's for those bachelor people that no one seems to know exist. The other poem I will read, because there's so many I wanted everyone to get a chance to say their say. This is a song, it is a song, it's a piece of writing I wrote, and it's about trees. In 1988, I was asked to take part in the Biennale of Sydney, and it was the bicentenary of the coming of Captain Cook, or the coming of Arthur Phillip and the first convict fleet to Australia. It was such a wondrous thing to have thousands of convicts come here. You can imagine if a boat pulled up here with about 1,000 convicts from Long Bay, Manly Council would go berserk with joy. So, however, I made a piece of art called The Aboriginal Memorial. It was 200 burial poles in a little grove of trees. It's like a little grove of 200 tree trunks. And I learned a lot about trees. Since 1788 to 1988, 200 years, the Europeans that came here cut down half the trees on the Australian continent in those 200 years. They're now still trying, the National Party that used to call themselves the Country Party, are still trying to cut down even more trees and loosen the rules about that. My name is Djon Mundine. I'm a Bundjalung man. One of my totems, a very major totem, is the native fig tree. It's called the hairy man tree. And I wrote this piece in 2003 called From a Small Hairy Man. I saw a hairy man under the sacred fig tree, a rare, feared sight in the dark, a fleeting outlined shadow, covered in hair-string tassels, silent and smelly, graceful but clumsy. He wanders the thickest rainforest and peers out to watch the outside world. At home but homeless, warm but cold, wanting but afraid, alone and alone, doomed, Yarama. I saw a hairy man under the sacred fig tree today. Under the fig tree, I think I saw me. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, John. Amazing. Our next poet, Gayle Kennedy, is from the New South Wales Nyimpa Nation. Her poetry collection, Koori Girl Goes Shopping, was shortlisted in 2005 for the Queensland Premier's David Nunopen Literary Award. Gayle won the award in 2006 with Me, Ant-Man and Fleabag, which went on to be published by Queensland University Press. She has published 11 children's books with Oxford University Press and has articles and poems in national and international publications such as Edinburgh Review, Southerly Review, Phoenix International and Penguin. And today she'll be reading her poem, Home.
Home. Mum yearns for home. She finds neither peace nor comfort in this place by the sea. Says she can't feel her blackness and fears dying here. She's afraid the spirits of the old ones won't find her amongst the concrete, steel and gleaming white walls. She worries they won't hear her spirit cry through the thrum of people and machines. She begs me each day to take her home. I tell her the doctors say she's not well enough and will die if she leaves. So what, she says. It's my life and I want to live the rest of it on country. Sign whatever papers you have to and get me out of here. She doesn't know that I could sign them now and take her home. I don't because I know she will be gone in months and I can't bear the thought of that. And so she stays, toying with bland hospital food and longing to drink scalding tea, the colour of burnt caramel from chipped enamel mugs, sweetened by thick, condensed milk. Limp white bread smeared with margarine can't match slabs of hot, crusty damper, slathered in melted butter and apricot jam from tins. She doesn't care for jam in glass jars. Don't know why, she says, but it just doesn't taste as good. She wants mutton and vegetables cooked in camp ovens on the smouldering ashes of saltbush and bellar trees. She wants her dog Gus and worries for his welfare. He's an old fellow like me. We've been together all his life. I just got to get home to him, Dor. She wants red earth, clear blue skies. She wants bindies in her feet for the sheer pleasure of having her granddaughter dig them out with safety pins so she can display them on the tip of her finger to be admired and murmur, now that was a big A bub. She wants to gossip, give cheek, play cards and bingo, go shopping. She wants her people around her, singing and playing country music on guitars and telling tall tales. I know these white fellas do their best, Dort, but they ain't blood. No one knows you like your own blood. She wants old Jenny B to cut and dye her hair, that deep black with the mulberry sheen she loves. The sight of her white mop makes both of us cry. Ain't no Jones woman over the age of 50 ever been seen with their own hair colour. This white cotton wool on me head just makes me shame. I tell her I'll die for her, but she reckons no. Only Jenny B knows how to do it right. I have to find the courage to take her home and let her live her last days as she chooses. I must care for her as she cared for me, with unconditional love. So I sign the papers, and for the first time in this longest month, my mother smiles. She's giddy with joy as I wheel her to the car for the long journey home. The first thing she does when we get there is collect Gus. Then once inside her gate, turns the hose on and sprays down the bone-dry garden, inhaling the sweet smell of water on red earth, the scent of home, her safe harbour in the desert. No needles attached to cannulas could ever inject the kind of life-giving potions into her frail body that this sweet aroma and her joyful prancing dog does. In her last months, we eat, laugh, drink and sing. We sit beneath the trees and she tells me stories of droving and riding camels and months on the road and buying beautiful dresses and shoes from the travelling Indian hawkers to wear to the show and the big dances, especially the one where she met Dad. Never seen a better looking fella in all me born days. Never loved a man before or since him. You got his smile, Dor. Lucky you, eh? Oh, yes, lucky me. She dies on a still summer morning on an old wooden bed beneath her beloved trees, music playing, her old dog beside her. I hold her hand as our people quietly keen. Tears turn to smiles as a flock of cockatoos fly overhead. We all know that they have caught her spirit. It will not wander alone. Once again she is home. Old Gus joins her the next day. They come for him as well.
Thank you so much to Gayle. We have another Gayle reading for us now, Gayle Sobott. Gayle's books include Colour Me Blue and My Longest Round, and she has had recent stories appear in Heke, Veritila, Mianjin, Prometheus Dreaming, and the anthology Botswana Women Write. Gayle has a PhD in literature from the University of Hull, England, and is the founding director of Outlandish Arts, a disabled-led not-for-profit arts organisation, which everybody should check out. It's amazing. Please welcome Gayle.
This poem is relating to a kind of a grief, really, about what's happening in the world to our natural world. And it's also about looking more and more into how we are biologically part of that natural world. So, yeah, hopefully it explains itself. Where am I when winds blow shadows that shift shape across a wall, disjoint the stems of plants, their succulent leaves sway? Where am I? When what's left of river water barely ripples over stones, creases the insomniac blues of a cloudless sky. Where am I? When microbiota invade my biofluids, tissue, bacteria merge with skin, mouth, vagina. Retroviruses become endogenous, tangled fungal cells occupy I decline. A composite being, my spine curves. A row of dark trees, the lining of my stomach atrophies thin as air. Hair grays, carried by the breeze. Limbs float, fatigued downstream. Porous, I live for now.
Albert is a jack of all trades and a master of absolutely nothing. Don't know if we believe him. He's been writing poetry of questionable quality, we'll be the judge of that, Albert, for years, and only recently learned how to make it bearable. Currently he works in data and is just as irreverent in person as he is in his bio. Fabulous bio. Please welcome Albert.
So today I will be doing a poem titled A Single Blade of Grass. And it's kind of a reflection on just kind of how big the world is and how in the grand scheme of things we might as well just be a blade of grass. I am a single blade of grass. I have humble roots and bright complexion. I am just as beautiful as everything else in this world. I am small. And sometimes I wonder if I can change anything at all. But I know that I am part of something greater. I am a part of this forest, this tangling of branches and breaths. If bushfire comes for me, if I am burned alive by the sun-child, this raging flame, so be it. Let my body be the birthplace for another. If heavy rain comes for me, if I am uprooted by a flood of sky tears, this woeful tide, so be it. Let fate decide whether death or adventure waits on the other side. I am a single blade of grass. And this world is so massive. To feel the morning breeze, to carry dew at dawn, to witness all this wonder is enough. To have lived is enough. I am enough.
Thanks so much, Albert. I judge that as way more than bearable. What are you talking about? Our next poet, Judy Johnson, has 5 full-length collections published and several chapbooks. She has won many prizes for her poetry, including the Victorian Premier's Literary Award and the Melbourne University Wesley Michael Wright Prize 3 times. Her last collection, Dark Convicts, was shortlisted in the New South Wales Premier's Award. The book centres around the life and times of her 2 African-American First Fleet convict ancestors. And today Judy will be reading Inheritance.
Inheritance. I met you last night in a dream of the old house. You were rearranging the furniture, as I always remembered you doing. The orange wallpaper, with its 70s brown swirls, still throbbed like a psychedelic toothache. And there was an odd vacant smell of disinfectant, as though someone had attempted to wash away a previous occupancy and not quite managed. Just help me with this coffee table, dear. You, Mother, were up to your elbows in the heft of transmigration. I thought this time, if I put the armchair there, that's how you liked it as a little girl, remember? I never imagined a ghost could have such strength and stamina. I suppose then you must be in it for the long haul. I've been rearranging things for years, you said, bringing the decor closer to my taste, tweaking this flower arrangement, turning that picture to the wall, repositioning the contours of your face. You must have noticed.
Thank you so much to Judy. Our next poet is Zeina Issa. She is a Sydney-based Australian Lebanese poet, translator and published columnist. Her work has appeared in Australian Poetry, Mascara Literary Review, Red Room Poetry and Contrapasso, and has also been anthologized. As the founder of the MACM group, Zeina has supported locally based Arab musicians and singers through staging numerous concerts and musical events. She is also the creator and editor of Poem and Dish, an online space where Australian poetry and her other passion, Eastern Mediterranean food, are shared and celebrated. And it's a fabulous website, you should definitely check that out, Poem and Dish. Please welcome Zeina.
Thank you. This short poem of mine speaks about when I first came to Australia, and I found myself in this beautiful country, but I also realized that I had lost my voice. Even though I learned English and I spoke English, I didn't feel that I could express myself, so it speaks about that frustration. Landing on Terra Australis. It is a change of seasons. I fall into your southern land as you strip me of my tawny foliage. Your colonizer's language is not foreign to my tongue, yet I stand scrutinized by your red center. I swallow its fire, my throat, ash. I mimic your words, but all I can vocalize is mud clinging to my roots, withered and defeated. I gather remnants of a self stuck in a no-man's land, desperately crawling its way in. I was once a tall, centreless Lebanese. Thank you.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Zeina. Next up we have the fabulous Anne Walsh. Anne is a poet and a story writer. She's been shortlisted twice for both the ACU Prize in Literature and for the Newcastle Poetry Prize. Her work has appeared in Cordite, Mascara, Canberra Times, Verity La, Poem and Dish, Femme Asia, Not Very Quiet magazine, and US-based Glimmer Train Journal. And it was also performed as part of the Monologue Adventures in Sydney in 2019. At the invitation of American actor Titus Burgess, Anne read her work as part of Carnegie Hall's inaugural live online concert in April 2020. Wow. She has 2 collections of poems, I Love Like a Drunk Does, beautiful title, and Intact. Please welcome Anne.
just very quickly to say that, you know, anybody who's doing, any artist is a translator, regardless of what your first language is. There's that source language that's non-verbal, where all of this work comes from, where our hearts come from. So I'm trying to explain that in this poem. I don't know if I do, but anyway, it's called Moksha. Letting go is a scheme, a lit membrane inside, a dark crystalline lens. I let go like that. Behind my closed paper-thin lids, the glow of my snow globe eyes, I play in the pressure of inverse mountains. 1,000 dark atmospheres can't crush me. I'm a solitary monk, fish, a slow predator of snow, Hadal's spelunker, viperfish seared with glasses, so nearsighted, everything is distance, seen close up, with my giant third eye turned in for flashes of forever. My eyesight is 20/20. Below 10,000 feet, I'm the snow I eat. I'm Origin's street lamp in the deep. I'm old growth, cool sea, cucumber. I don't come up for air. I breathe other things than oxygen way down here. Charged particles, liquid walls of shimmer. The deepest light there is the light that shouldn't be. That's the light inside of me. Light that has no precedent and no end. Even I'm surprised at my Duracell. In the hatchetfish mouth of my heart is a hope I shouldn't have. A mountain goat, light that survives where she shouldn't be able to and leaps past the next impossible. Black dragonfish wagging a bulb my heart, mesmerizing the sun to spring from me. Sweet secretary of the interior, my heart. Speaker of the house of infinity. You never heard me because you can't hear the high of low frequency. The dog whistle of night, I write verbatim. How my core strengthened for millennia in Pilates trees by the bending backbones of pines in snow. How winter stretches in me, in her ripped leotard leaves, the crushed feet of her professional dancer, Moon. How she bleeds to dance. Oh, the lake, the swan of her is the light my heart creates. Even frozen, there's harvest. A squirrel's stash of grace, a Lego of squashed radiant yellow. The fresh orange of pumpkins frost keeps its heaven's wild amber floodlight in my brown eyes. Working from behind the scenes, the stage manager of Mariana Worlds, raising the curtain for the show of everything. My soul, the producer, the director, and the writer. While your production cheats for funding all the normal channels, mine is a hit called Giving Everything, Every Time for Love. Teeming words, these electric orange bodies of jellyfish rise from the abyss. I swim across pages. Later, I'm the diver and language, the fanning orange, fluorescent flora, life, self-lighting in V-deep depression. Self-love is the only fire in hell, and it's heaven.
Thank you so much, and absolutely amazing.
Hi. This poem is set in Sydney in 1943, and it was prompted by an article that I read in the once popular pictorial Pics magazine about one of the painter Norman Lindsay's models. The poem is called Rita Lee's Wedding. Mazy-eyed, they danced the bridal waltz beneath an honours arch of painters' palettes, the cut-and-come-again wedding cake baked with black market butter. As Norman Lindsay clapped the bride and groom, he traced the contours of his second favourite model, with vivacious strokes recalled her lovely breasts, her opalescent flesh, the intimacy of spinster silence. At 15, she'd climbed the stairs to Bridge Street, dressed in drapes and diadems, 10 shillings a sitting, water boiling on a little gas ring. Through almond eyes, Rita saw her shape shift in the cut glass decanter, a fragment of statuesque siren, a rose gold band, a plain Magdalene.
My background in physics, a professional life of building software, and a long-standing study and teaching of meditation. He has published in The Blue Nib, The Honest Ulsterman, Live Encounters and Backstory Journal. He was thrilled to be awarded a highly commended certificate in the 2019 W.B. Yeats Poetry Prize. Daragh is currently convener of the Sydney Poetry Lounge, which is a fabulous event which I've been to. A long-standing open mic night that runs on the third Wednesday of every month still. Yes, I definitely check that one out. Please welcome Daragh.
Thanks, Michelle. So this is a poem that's a response to legions of friends of mine who have marriages and children and all that sort of stuff, who often tell me that I'm extremely lucky to have lots of free time to myself. And, you know, I largely agree. It's called Freedom Sonnet. The walls are close. The morning sky is dim, grey tarmac, damp trouser leg kind of day. I'm perched, coffee in hand, upon my bench, in mind of all years past, the fitful way they quickly loose the lead, run free and wild. A last looking back grin, and off they go. I'm left without the trappings of this age, thinking of things I neither own, nor owe, no home, no loan, no son or daughter heir, nothing to leave behind in the event. No price of hours to pay, days are my own. No special sorrow, no longing, no lament. I tell myself it's fine, it's mostly true. There's days I wish I had something to lose. Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have a diva. A diva at heart, Liz Steer, is a cabaret performance artist who takes her poetry to the people in museums, nightclubs, even graveyards. Known for her intense, dark humour, Lou's poems explore the many faces of love. She speaks of hearts and flowers, but the hearts are fractured and the flowers have thorns. Her poems are widely anthologised and published. Her performance highlights include Sydney Book Fair, Soapbox at Museum of Contemporary Art, Jurassic Lounge at the Australian Museum, Sydney Multi-Language Poetry Slam and Sydney Poetry Lounge. She has also performed at many festivals, including the Sydney Fringe, Newcastle Fringe, the Marrickville and Newtown festivals. Lou was the convener of Caravan Slam, the largest poetry slam in Sydney's inner west from 2015 to 2018. Another fabulous event. Please welcome Lou.
Oh, Father, winds fill my sails across this sea of green. Once the sweetheart, shiny and new, glowing with promise despite the outdated haircut and horrible school uniform, box pleats gaping wide across my generous breasts, designed to make me so undesirable I had no choice but to ace all my exams. Mama told me I wasn't pretty enough to be in the movies. Now the whole world is my stage. My red velvet heart matches the curtains, swathing rickety cabaret platforms where I spout my truth, gushing fountains of words. My verdant green heart beats on my sleeve like a beacon or a smartwatch as I dodge the sewer rats of politics, racing against time to keep everyone's home safe for civilised living, not developers' pockets. As I sail across the sea of years, my sails are full. Fair winds billow me along, no anchor weighing me down. No compass can find my destination. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lou. Our next reader is Tony Voss. Tony was born in Nambia in 1935. He was educated at St George's Grammar School, Cape Town, Rhodes University, Grahamstown, and the University of Washington, Seattle. When he retired from a career teaching in universities, Tony and his wife Carol settled in Sydney, where they've lived ever since. Tony's first book of verse, The Mushroom Summer of Skipper Darling, was published in 2019. Please welcome Tony.
Thank you all, and thank you, Michele. Thanks to the gallery and the council and La Verite. Thanks. The poem I have submitted is the fourth part of a four-part poem called Approaches. This part is called Crossing. Holding a handsome arc from east to west, or is it west to east? The footbridge spans the soiled canal, visible from the south as from the north, but out of bounds, taboo to pioneer pedestrians who know that the slim bow is held in custody like toxic waste among the furnaces and forges, the mills and the machinery. One day, an artless track will find its way to lead me to the footbridge I have seen. The old canal will shine again. The banks will bloom with bottlebrush and lily, fern and weeping grass, keen to the nightly call of curlew, the song of whistler and wren. Crossing from east to west or west to east, the world will never be the same again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. Our next reader is Danika Peterson. Danika is a writer of all trades, a copywriter, essayist, and her personal favourite, a poet. An expat residing on Sydney Northern beaches, she is currently working on a collection of personal essays focused on her experience living overseas. Her writing has been published by Rebel Society and the first issue of Icons by Be Likewise Press. In her spare time, Danika loves to teach herself how to roller skate without falling down. Please welcome Danika.
Hello everyone, thank you, Michele. This poem is called History of the Alphabet. I kind of wrote it considering all the things that are going on this year, particularly about the queer community and our culture, our history. While we all choose to identify differently, we all come from the same history, people who made way for spaces for us to exist today. We used to meet in dive bars with no windows. Cigarette smoke clung to your throat, spent all night choking with enjoyment. Now we live in glass palaces. The world can see me, see you, see us, enthrall them with our extravagant beauty. We used to hang colorful secrets at our back pockets, a ring of keys on our belt, a thin silver halo on our thumbs. What's your style, left or right? Queen Marcia threw the second stone, told us to have courage, so we hung flags out our windows, held hands marching. We forgot our mother and placed each other in straight, neat boxes, easier to wrap our arms around each other that way. Lives are the cost of selective memory. We're still praying over graves, resting our strength against hashtags, trying to ease the regret that's still settled in our collective spine. Rage is like guilt. It never disappears, but gets smaller and grows docile to be put to good use. We wrote compassion in every line of the rainbow, tried to remember what forgiveness tastes like. There are no secrets in safe spaces, nowhere to hide from the reflections, but there's a lot to learn from these identities, like yourself. We stole insults and put them on our chest, made sure that we saw each other for as we are, everyone accounted for, no one forgotten. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so our next poet is a bit of a legend of the poetry scene, Les Wicks. For over 45 years, Les has performed widely in Australia and internationally. He's been published in over 350 different magazines, anthologies and newspapers across 30 countries in 15 languages. He conducts workshops around Australia and has edited various projects over the decades, the latest being the anthology To End All Wars in 2018. Les runs Muse Poetry, which focuses on poetry outreach projects like poetry on buses and poetry published on the surface of a river. His 14th book of poetry is Belief, published by Flying Islands in 2019. Thank you, Les.
Thank you, Michelle, a real warrior for Australian poetry, and we don't forget. This poem was written in WA, so just to explain, the Marigum and the 28 Parrot are indigenous to that area. The Dust Conundrum. Is there anything more useless than sitting under a Marigum reading ecopoetics? A gum nut falls on my head like a symbol or symbol. Certainly a missive, that clang of life, the discard and promise of this potential sapling while I'm sampling a forest of argument fenced in a page. It's my time to listen. I'd flown over empty dams, electronic rivers scratched at the cloud I lived within. I was just cold. There is the beat, no birds, no bee doubles. They say a mosque burns on a hill too used to kneeling. The 28 Parrot has snipped a lemon. It rolls downhill to my feet. That's appropriation. I squeeze it into my cider. Tomorrow will be fine and dry again. Thank you.
Okay, so our next poet is Jenni Nixon. Jenni is a writer and performance-based poet living in Sydney with readings at diverse venues from town halls, writers' festivals, in bookshops, pubs and on the radio. Her poetry collections include Swimming Underground and Cafe Boogie. Her work has been widely anthologised, with recent poetry appearing in Cordite, Southerly, Rochford Street Press and Not Very Quiet magazine. And she is currently working on a new collection of poetry. Please welcome Jenni.
Thank you. Chiaroscuro. See lines run into other lines, how smudges and brush strokes fade to the edge, grow thin, pale, muddied as memory in burdens and gaps. Brown spots on skin, deep gashes of black where smiles were, now are marks of anger and pain. Hair greying, back bending with the weight of time passing. This aging, as Bet Davis said, is not for sissies. The lovers you failed and lost, the teachers you met who showed a way forward after booze took away purpose and dignity. Famous people and some so ordinary you winced in arrogance and ignorance, a witness to atrocities, the genius of our species, and all the brutality. Now, over the hill, lost the way back, no longer in it for the long haul, alone, listening to songs of Bob Dylan. Soon the lines of sweeping paintwork will disappear as friends have done, as if by a dark magic vanish, shredded unexpectedly as the Banksy painting did at an auction with just a few scraps left hanging neatly in air. Light extinguished and darkness prevails. Such is death. Until then, turn the page, sketch in another beginning. On your head a rainbow lorikeet picks at strands of blonde hair. A smile plays on the lips. The sun is shining. You are still alive.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenni. Negar Rezvani is a young Iranian poet and political refugee. In 2013, at the age of 18, she sought asylum in Australia. Negar was forced to live in offshore processing prison in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for over 6 years and is currently living with a community detention visa in Australia. She is deprived of a work and study permit. Negar is passionate about creative writing. Her first interview was published in The Guardian in May 2019 while she was still detained, and her first poem, My Dear Prison Officer, was featured in Red Room Poetry and shared at the International Theatre Festival, a Whirlwind in Switzerland. Sadly, she remains in community detention, so she isn't able to be here to read for us today, but has prepared a video.
It's 2,314 days that you are the prison officer and I'm still your prisoner. My dear prison officer, your bullet have lacerated my house arrest throat, my room nauseated from anxiety. When is your inspection going to end? The pain which suffers in my skull I retain between the darkness of my two knees. From my eyes, memory wandering is dreaming. I might that note, which is my only wealth. The more you harrow my wants, I weep less, and instead, I ensequence my head on the fence's chairs. I lean and light. This is my only libretto. Her instantly sparkles come through. All the locks to see me. They lie on my breast. Sleeping fingers wake up. Before the news broadcasts my lungs bleeding from phosphate, I stamp my testimonies at this script. One day, you remember my eyes, how they hunt the sunrise.
Thank you to Negar. Our next poem is Yasaman Bagheri. Yasaman is a 21-year-old writer. In 2013, she fled Iran due to religious and political persecution and sought asylum in Australia. Since the age of 16, she was incarcerated in Australia's offshore detention regime. She was detained on Christmas Island Detention Centre, the Australian-run Nauru Offshore Detention Centre and Darwin Detention Centre for a total of 5 years. In 2018, Yasaman was medevaced to Australia and is currently living in Queensland in community detention. Yasaman is not allowed to study or work, but this hasn't stopped her from writing. Sadly, she cannot be here today as she remains in detention. However, she has given me permission to read her amazing poem, The Cage. The Cage. They will only believe my story if it is beautiful, I was told. If it is not too bad to be true. because denial has always followed an ugly truth, a choice to suit conscience. I'm tired of these worn-out stories. People lost, water, people found, detention, and despair pacing in between. I wonder if these stories are still mine or bad dreams from the past. There are more important things in the world, I was told, when what I went through wasn't the absolute worst, for sure. I should be grateful for everything I have now. It's more than what many people could ask for, but somehow it doesn't heal my wounds. I see myself in a cage. I scream, but even I can't hear my own voice. I see their bodies float around, those lucky ones, they are so dead and free. Echoing in my head, I hear the radio transmitters too. I hear my name, ULA 022. I see the guards, I still fight with them. I can't hold my tongue, even though I know I will be punished for it later. I keep fighting and they grow taller, looking down at me with their always in different faces. Robots. They laugh so loud and anger paralyzes me. Trapped inside these walls, only one of us is getting paid thousands of dollars for being here, and that's not me. It's a job to them. It's my breath, my heartbeat, my life. Anger consumes my existence. It exhausts me. I never wanted to taste the bitterness of life. They laugh and push me around, those security guards in green uniforms. I keep so much rage inside of me for this world. And anger is the worst chain, like an anchor you put around your neck, weighing you down, sinking, tightening around your throat. They laugh. They laughed when people died too, and I watched with resentment. Their job is to keep us alive for as long as we are in their custody. It's not us they're worried about, it's the blame they don't want to take for any death. It's not their conscience that might bother them. In their eyes, we deserve it. It's not the killing they have a problem with. No. They tell us proud stories of how many people they have killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. They are soldiers and this is their battlefield. For them, nothing has changed. We are still the enemies. But in this cage, the game is to drive us into despair in the hope that we might kill ourselves. I never knew how broken I am until they set us free. I thought the day they let me go, I will run far and fast, but I looked down when I was freed. So much had changed inside the cage. They had left us scars, cuts on the skin, still open, still bleeding. My legs were too numb to run, as if they weren't mine. Free in reality, but in truth, like a cloak, I still wear the cage. They have broken my dreams. It wasn't the work of one or two people, and not a week or a month, but years and many of them. I left the cage, leaving some parts of me behind. I left a different person with so much anger and not enough to burn the memories of the past. The wired fences are carved on my skin, a keepsake from those times. I left the cage, but it never left me. So that is from Yasaman, who's only 21 years old and has spent most of her teenage years in detention. So our next poet is David Ades. David is a widely published poet and short story writer. He is the author of poetry collections Mapping the World, Afloat in the Light, and the chapbook Only the Questions Are Eternal. David has won the University of Canberra Vice-Chancellor's International Poetry Prize, been twice nominated for a Pushcart Prize and shortlisted for several other prizes in Australia, the US and Israel. He's the convener of the Poets' Corner monthly poetry reading and now podcast series from Westwords. In association with Mascara Literary Review, David is one of 4 writers currently sharing the Don Bank Writers in Residence this year. Please welcome David.
This poem was written actually at Don Bank, so without that residency I wouldn't have written anything this year, so I'm very grateful for it. It's called Self-Portrait with Boys and Men, and it has a famous epigraph by Walt Whitman, I contain multitudes. There is a man occupying my body. He bears some resemblance to the history of boys and men who have come and gone before him like so many occupying powers. Iterations of himself, similar, but not the same. He likes to think he can remember them all, but they are shadowy, elusive, fragmented, their edges blurred, overlapping. He evokes the memory of one or another when he speaks, sometimes with fondness, sometimes with regret. He is stuck with the tangled skeins of their passage, foundering in the quicksand of their accumulated pasts. He cannot penetrate time's membrane to commune with or invoke them. Ghosts do not proffer counsel. They occupy and preoccupy him more than he would like, making him question himself. What would that man have done in this situation? And that one? He knows that it is only a matter of time before he joins them and another man takes his place, and then another, for so long as my body permits. My body whispers to him. It is tired of all these men, this long parade of selves cast from the same forge. It chafes against limitation, craves difference, other offerings. An owl's swivelling gaze, a gazelle's grace, a fox's light tread, a German shepherd's devotion, a woman's fire and insight, the world remade, a new love filling its still blazing heart.
Thank you so much, David. That was beautiful. Our next poet is Erin Shiel. Erin has had poems published in Mascara, Meanjin, Cordite and Australian love poems. In 2018, she was shortlisted for the University of Canberra VC Poetry Prize. She has spent most of her working life at the intersection of health and community sectors and lives with her partner and 4 sons in Sydney. She's writing a collection of poems, many of which are inspired by contemporary art. So please welcome Erin.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'd just like to credit Aida Temescu, who's a beautiful abstract artist who inspired this poem. On hearing my name. In the beginning, the name is what I am, told I am. Then I adopt it, and it becomes part of my own shape, a form to roll around my mouth, a ball of clay, smooth and cool. I grow, I learn, I say my name like it's my own mantra. I take the name to school and throw it in the playground like a ball, see if anyone will catch it, throw it back, or hurl it into the bush behind the shed. It is comforting in its roundness and soothing in its marble cold. Then I grow pimples, I drive too fast, I eat junk food late with friends, I get a job I hate, pay rent, then a mortgage on a house worse than the one I rented. I love, I love, I love. Sometimes I hate. I have a baby, I bring it home to the house, and the one I love yet sometimes hate. I give the child a name and say it to her over and over until she catches the ball too. And I see her roll it around in her red Play-Doh mouth, enjoying the cool. One day, when I'm alone, I go walking through a eucalypt forest. Cockatoos shriek, and the ocean can be heard through the bush, but not seen. Tiny finches flit too fast for the eye. I almost tread on a stick, but mid-air I realise it's not a stick, but a brown snake, and I hop over it. It slithers into the undergrowth, flicking its body like a stockman's whip. I walk deeper into the bush. A fog comes in from the sea. From the distance it looks like a shower curtain, but it's too fine to fall into rain. The fog creeps in between the trees and bush. The finches have gone home to sit and wonder in their labyrinthine branches. The cockatoos are not shrieking anymore, and I know this means the snake has gone home too. There is no creature here but me. I have a small torch. When I switch it on the fog, it turns into a cinema screen and I see it all. The house with the mortgage, the argument with the lover, the job I hate, the child I named, the friends who made me laugh and cry, the bills to pay, the unfixed crappy computer, the aunt I haven't visited, the God I didn't speak to, the course I didn't graduate from, the meal I loved on the table I bought for myself, the dress my father gave me, the book unwritten, the swim I didn't go for. I brush my skin off, scraping back with my hands until there is just the fog and I, the torch still shining, the light bouncing off the fog as white as bed sheets, the bed I made. Then I hear my name just once, clearly. A bird calls it from within the fog. I am in there. I hear myself for the first time.
Thank you so much, Erin. I think you were writing about me, maybe. Okay, thank you. So next up we have Marshall Slither. Marshall is a retired audiologist and a long-time resident of Manly. He has been fascinated with the power of language and images all his life. His work in words and images explores the nature of art, music and memory. For Marshall, poetry is a natural way to express and explore his observations and understandings of the world. Marshall's fascination with the way words and images interact and inform each other is reflected in the poems that often accompany his paintings. His most recent pre-COVID performance and art exhibition was held at Desire Books and Records in Manly. Please welcome Marshall.
Thank you very much, Michelle. This is a poem that's about a poem, and it's also in the light of this wonderful exhibition about painting, about portraits, and about auto-portraits. I hope it says something about all those things. It's called Portrait of a Murderer. That's my last Duchess, painted on the wall. Says Browning's loathsome Duke. He paints an auto-portrait with his words, unwittingly revealing his own dark soul. Ferrara stands there, soft-spoken, courtly, elegant, and preening, describing the portrait of his late Duchess, not his last, or so he hopes, with a calibrated backstory to us guests from a future time. We see through his lies. The man's a psychopath. His courtesy is tissue thin. The history he recounts about his murdered wife, of her careless laughter, her loose behavior that dishonored his ancient noble ancestry. It's rubbish, a pack of lies. His anecdotes are concocted to sway us to his cause and to gain another dowry. Vain, deceptive, venal, a murderous monster. This is the self-portrait that he reveals, the real man. Were we to focus where he directs us to the portrait hanging on the wall of his dark, decaying palazzo, we would see not a person, but a painting. Pigments and marks subject to interpretation by an unreliable narrator. If Ferrara had concocted a different story, we might have judged him more kindly. This, sir, is my daughter, stolen from me by the plague. How I treasure her memory. The same portrait on the wall, lit up by different lies. But lies give context, and without that, what would a portrait be?
Nice reading. Thank you so much, Marshall. Okay, so next up we have the wonderful Cecilia White.
Cecilia is an award-winning interdisciplinary artist, poet and researcher who received her PhD from UNSW Art and Design in 2017. Cecilia's multilingual poetry, site-specific performance, drawing and installation practice directs a focus on the sense of self and the urgent need for a radical social remapping. Along with her chapbook, Nothing is Set in Stone, Cecilia has won the International Cricket Poetry Prize, received special mention in the Victorian Cancer Council Prize, is published in numerous Poetry at the Pub anthologies and in magazines such as Paris Lit Up, Black and Five Bells. Cecilia tutors in fine art at UNSW and in German at the University of Newcastle.
So thank you. And yes, I am very interested in our sense of self, particularly at this very strange time that we're in, and how it generates, where it comes from. And in my delving into portraiture, I found somebody who also had a very interesting sense of self. It was challenged, and she rose to that challenge. Making the most of yourself. Reflection on the work of Artemisia Gentileschi, Self-Portrait as the Allegory of Painting, 17th century. In the studio, a circle of 17 easels, spaced so evenly they conjure connection to the sacred, the centuries, and the unlit self. The sky breaks through each pane of glass, bearing the unspoken and colouring time. Confronted with the blank canvas, which I am not, I think how other light has fallen on faces leaning towards an idea that may brush past restraint and tradition to appear in its own form, gespenst-like, with a rumour of veritas, that state of perception too often reliant on the varnishing effects of politics, ignoring the shaft of brilliance that lifts the eye from the flat repetition of reason, and wanting every slap of the knife to contain a murderous intent worthy of conviction. To create the wrong impression is easily done. Observers draw conclusions from a few rough lines, whispered around town, smudging the air behind your back like marks on paper that embed themselves indelibly, breaking the fibres of an already tense surface. The burnt umber background so obscura. No one interprets the invisible without referring to failure, or that spring, and your furious burn like willow in a small clearing north of dignity. A charcoaling act so long ago. Some say now you prefer not to recall the pressure applied to your thumbs to extract the truth, as if realism in art and law meant the same thing. Caravaggio would understand. His body and work, a mottled palette of devotion and derision, twinning golden focus and menacing shadow, until light left his eye by the side of an uncertain road. You remember of that, I'm certain. In your studio, you learned to draw attention to yourself as a circle of light, breaking through pane and glass ceilings in a century not known to favour bright women. Some say not much has changed, but your lean to the left, held forward in gaze, illuminates the spell of capturing sight in both hands and making the most of yourself.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Cecilia. Our next poet is Mark Marusic of Enmore. Mark is co-convener of Poets at the Peterson Bolo, a monthly open mic soiree. He has published 2 books of poems, Mercurial Meanderings and Iconoclastic Journeys, great titles. He is a member of the UK Facebook group Coronaverses, Poems from the Pandemic, and recently had a poem published in their book of the same title. Please welcome Mark.
So this poem is called Seashore. Making footsteps here, first time in over 30 years. In a sense, I do so, not as who I now am. Something calls me here, recalling me to visions long forgotten, the oyster of a younger mind, far more pearls, not yet cast before swine, far more shells along this shore. Resting one against my ear, I hear the sound of where it comes from. So too in me live on the places I have been. Threads they hold of parts of me long forgotten, that could weave into the fabric of who I now am. Just as my eardrums can recall this shell to the roar of the ocean, which will take it back at high tide only. Now its oyster and its pearls are gone. Once my last pearl's gone, my lifelong casing transformed to ashes. Too will carry on between the sea and shore. Did I first perceive this in this place so long ago? As I walk along this beach, the spirit of my vanished parts renews my pod to feel, not half empty, but half full. Thank you.
Our last poet today is Imogene Robertson. Imogen is 10 years old and in Year 5 at school. She enjoys beach sport, reading and writing. Her favourite poets are Emily Dickinson, Banjo Paterson and T.S. Eliot. So she obviously has a very good taste. Please welcome Imogene.
The surface. All the stars lighting the inky sky, all the droplets of water filling the sea, all of them unafraid of who they are, all of them feeling what it's like to be free. I feel the pressure of others around. I hear their speech like cicadas at night. But with all the others chirping so loud, I cower under their noises in fright. Come to the surface, summon your voice and find your way to the surface. I bring up courage and all of my will and let out a paltry squeak of my own. The others stop for a moment, then snicker with spite, pushing me further, yet further down. I am beginning to feel even more daunted. Will I ever find my place on the leaves above? But without trying, I can never succeed, just as the tightly bound cocoon cannot become a moth. Come to the surface, persist, and one day you may be on the surface. I summon up courage and all of my strength, and chirp, a true cicada, just glimpsing the light. But one other pinned me down, blocking the warmth. Struggling is no use, they put up a stronger fight. Come to the surface, call for a friend, and together reach for the surface. I chirp to my guidance in life, my all, and my family comes and gives a great heave. We squirm for the surface and breathing fresh air. Together we're much stronger, a rope no one can cleave.
Thank you so much, Imogene. Beautiful poem. So that concludes our reading for today. Thanks again to Manly Art Gallery and Northern Beaches Council for hosting us. A huge thanks to our brilliant poets and to our audience for watching and supporting us. Till next year, thank you.